Welcome to another episode of Python for Bioengineers. Today we're going to be talking about another type of data structure. So earlier we went over lists and their applications in for loops, and we saw that you can make lists out of integers or strings, words, or even a mix of things. We can see that here, no errors. And lists are great, but they're not always the best type of data structure. So sometimes we want to use something called the tuple. Some people also say tuple. So I'm just going to make a tuple. You make one with parentheses instead of brackets, and then print it so you can see what they look like. So comparing int tuple and int list, they're very similar, just with different encapsulating characters. So let's print out some examples here, and we can say that see that when you index into a list, it's the same as indexing into a tuple. You use brackets as well for indexing into tuples. You can still use the length function on a tuple to see how long it is, and you can still even slice through a tuple. So if you want to grab just the second up to the fourth, remember zero-based indexing still applies here, values, then you can use the same slicing techniques with colons. However, there is basically one key difference, and that is that tuples are immutable. So what that means here is, as you can see, we have a list, our int list, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. We want to change the third value, so we say int list of 2 equals 16. It prints it out. And then now we try to do the same thing to the tuple, and it throws an error. And as we scroll down, we can see it says a tuple object does not support item assignment. So once you assign a value to a tuple, you can't change it. And while this may seem kind of like a drawback, there are a lot of situations where it's really nice to know exactly how many things are in an object or in a data structure and that they're not changing. So while it may seem, again, may seem a little useless, you can unpack a tuple. So here we have our int tuple, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 from up here. And if we run this, we can see that with this syntax of commas and assigning variables, we can unpack the tuple. So the tuple, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, has now been individually assigned to the variables A, B, C, and D. And then the most common application of this ability and the design of a tuple is to return multiple things from a function. So this is where you're going to see it used the most. And as an example, I wrote this function here called getLast2. So what it does is it takes in a number, and then it gives you the last 2 digits of that number. So just as a quick kind of theory, it uses the modulus or remainder function that we talked about in the operations video, as well as the floor division function to both get the remainder of division by 10 and then divide by 10 to get rid of that last number, the units digit. And then so it assigns those to 2 different numbers here, and using the same comma syntax, we can return a tuple. So let's define this function. And then when we get the last 2 digits of the number, here we do 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see that it returns a tuple with 3 and 4. So normally when you have a function, you can only return one value, but this is a way to kind of get around that rule and have a function that returns a bunch of different things. All right, thank you very much, and good luck. I hope this helps.